Hello YouTube world! Let's talk seed starting. I have been seed starting for about 10 years. I personally love the process. I'm that person in the neighborhood that always has extra starts because I go a little bit too crazy. I remember when I started out, I was very confused as to what I needed and kind of what's the minimum that you need for the different types of seed starting methods. Yes, there are different seed starting methods, and I'm gonna go through and talk about kind of the cheapest way to start, where you don't need as much equipment, all the way to maybe the most expensive way to start, and pros and cons of each. So let's start off the cheapest with direct sowing. Direct sowing is what I did with my kids in the last video. So for direct sowing, what do you need? You need good soil outside. This could be in a raised bed, it could be in an in-ground bed. It's very much the most cost-effective method.
So what are the pros and cons of direct sowing? The pros with direct sowing: it's inexpensive, you don't need a lot of equipment, all you need is your soil, you need your seeds, you need outside time. Then another pro is that it really saves a lot of time. You don't have that step of hardening off that you do with other methods because things are already planted outside. So you don't have to harden things off before planting them outdoors. So now what are the cons? The cons are really that you're leaving things up to Mother Nature. So if there's a frost in the forecast, if there's a heat wave, you're going to be covering things up with frost cloths or shade cloths and trying to control what you can control outdoors, which is very unpredictable. Another con is that not all places can direct sow all things. So some seeds take a long time to mature. You need to start them inside so that you have enough time during your growing season. But really, the back of the envelope on a seed packet or just Googling more about that certain crop that you want to grow will let you know if you can direct sow or not.
Direct sowing, we're calling that the cheapest method. Next up is going to be winter sowing. For me, this has been an awesome method. All right, we're going to do the rest of this video with a cat, or until she wants to leave. For winter sowing, what that means is you're going to start that in the winter. Basically, you're making mini greenhouses with recycled materials.
So with winter sowing, what you're doing is you're taking pre-moistened soil and you're planting your seeds in that pre-moistened soil, sealing up the greenhouse and then leaving it alone. It gets watered by the rain. It keeps the humidity in that little greenhouse. It's very hands-off and easy. If you don't consume anything that comes in a clear plastic container, you can ask your neighbors. They'll be happy to give it to them. I've seen posts on Nextdoor and Facebook. I've done it myself, collecting things from grandparents. So you get it where you can.
The types of things that I like to start in winter sowing containers are the beautiful, fun things that I want to grow. So I don't really start my vegetables because I want to make sure that I have vegetables, but things that I'd like to try and maybe aren't as attached to if they don't succeed, I do in winter sowing, which does not mean that winter sowing is a less effective method for seed starting. For whatever reason, that's just how I've done it. The different types of flowers I've done in winter sowing with great success are zinnias, marigolds, nasturtiums, bachelor buttons, you name it. Winter sowing is an awesome method, and I feel like the compromise between indoor sown and direct sown.
So pros and cons of winter sowing. Pro, it's a pretty hands-off method and it works really well. Another pro is you're avoiding buying grow lights. If you don't want to buy grow lights or have to deal with electrical anything, winter sowing is awesome. Now on to the cons. If you've done winter sowing before and you haven't had this problem, you have to comment below and let me know what worked for you. But a personal con for me is that when it's time to plant those seedlings, oftentimes they're really hard to get out of those containers. They've been growing and growing, they're really happy, but getting them out and dividing them, I feel like I lose a lot of potential plants that I would love to have in the garden. But that's pretty much the only con that I can see. So what's been your experience before? Have you done winter sowing? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you going to do it this year? Now we're on to indoor seed starting. This to me is the most time consuming and the most expensive method. Let's talk about it. What do you need? At the very minimum, you need grow lights. And they don't have to be sold as grow lights, but you need a source of light, a full spectrum light. So look for full spectrum LED lights and figure out how to add them to shelves because that's what you really need. I've tried doing it with just a bright window. I have not had results. If you've had results, let me know below. I've tried the trick where you put aluminum foil. I've tried the trick where you use bright white to try to reflect. Nothing worked for me with a window. Yes, did I get seedlings? Yeah. Were they very lanky and more likely to die? Also yes. So figure out where you want to spend your time, trying to revive lanky seedlings or going ahead and buying those lights that will give you more success. I don't use a fan. I know other people that do. I don't have an issue with mildew. And also I have a very, very cheap heating pad that I think is meant for tummies and not actually seed starting. Also for indoor seed starting, you're going to want to have your fluffy soil. So it can either be a very light potting mix that you've sifted, or you can use seed starting mix. You're going to need containers to pot up because unlike the other two methods, as these seedlings grow, they're going to need larger and larger containers until they're ready for the great outdoors.
So for indoor seed sowing, the things that I like to grow are things for my vegetable garden that I absolutely want to have no matter what. For whatever reason, winter sowing is reserved for flowers, indoor seed sowing is reserved for vegetables. The vegetables that I grow in my garden might be different from the ones you grow in your garden because I'm growing whatever my family likes to snack on. We grow out of 2 beds and they're really just snack beds. So the things my kids like to eat are cherry tomatoes, cucumbers, they don't like eggplant, they won't eat peppers, and also they like to have ground cherries. My youngest loves ground cherries.
So in terms of pros and cons, really the pros of indoor seed starting is that you can grow anything. You're not limited by your growing season. You can start things 12 weeks in advance like coleus and dahlia, or you could start things 6 weeks in advance like tomatoes. You're really able to time and create whatever you want to grow. You're no longer dependent on what is carried at your nurseries. You're able to order seeds from wherever and grow them yourself. So the cons for indoor seed starting are really that it's more expensive and it's time consuming. So what are the bare minimum things you need? Like I mentioned before, you're going to need a source of light. You're also going to be needing containers, not just containers for starting the seeds, but as those seeds grow, you're going to need to have bigger and bigger containers to pot them up, which means you need space. You need space with lights. So as those containers grow, they're still going to need light. They're going to take up more space. So be mindful of that as you're starting your seeds. Don't go out and start 100 different seeds thinking that that's all I have space for, and then as they grow, you enter that oopsie situation. What do I do? Also, when I say they're more time consuming, what I mean is that you're going to be spending a lot of time with your baby seedlings. You're going to be checking on them daily. And then once they're ready to go outside, you're going to be hardening them off, which is a couple-week process. So I hope that was helpful and gives you an idea of the different seed starting methods, what you need, and pros and cons of each. Like I said, I use all 3 methods just depending on what I'm growing, and I love using all 3 methods. I'm curious, do you seed start? Are you looking to seed start? What can I help answer for you? I would love to do that. You can drop a comment below. You can find me on Instagram and we can chat about it. Thank you for following. If you made it through this whole video, thank you for watching. I've loved having this little chat time about plants. I'm trying to figure out this YouTube thing. I'm very active on Instagram over at Gardens and Chickens. So if you ever want to chat about plants, I hope you won't hesitate to reach out and give me a follow. I'd love to create more content like this as the season goes on. I'm super excited and have lots of ideas.